Let me tell you something useful about being a spider in a world full of things that want to eat you and don't particularly feel bad about it. You learn very fast that the difference between a predator and prey is usually just timing, and the willingness to be patient while the timing improves. My name is Kale. I am a Goliath fang spider, roughly the size of a large horse, 8 legs, 8 eyes, and enough venom in my fangs to dissolve a full-grown stone troll in about 4 minutes. I am not the biggest thing in the Ashwood forest, but I am the most patient. And in this world, patience is worth more than size. The Ashwood is a dark place. The trees grow so tall their crowns disappear into the permanent gray cloud layer above, and sunlight is something that happens to other forests. I like it that way. Sunlight is overrated. Sunlight means being seen. Being seen means someone is calculating whether they can take what you have. In the Ashwood, I have a territory roughly 3 kilometers in any direction from the ancient hollow. A dead ironwood tree with a trunk wider than a house, which is where I sleep. Or rather, where I pretend to sleep while monitoring every vibration in the web network I have built through the surrounding forest over the past 2 years. The web is not decorative. Every thread is a sensor. Every anchor point is an alert. Anything heavier than a medium-sized deer that crosses my outer boundary wakes me up within seconds. I catch, I feed, I maintain the web. I expand the territory when something vacates a section. I avoid the things I cannot kill, and I eliminate the things I can. This is my life. It is a simple life, by most standards, and I find it genuinely, completely satisfying in a way that I suspect would disturb most 2-legged creatures. The only complication, the one unresolved variable in an otherwise well-ordered existence, is Scar. And Scar is a complication that has been getting more complicated for the past 3 months. Scar is a giant scolopendra, a centipede for those unfamiliar, roughly 4 meters long, armored in overlapping red-black plates, with enough legs to make even other predators uncomfortable just looking at him. He is also my oldest companion. We have hunted the same territory since we were both young enough to be prey for something larger. We know each other's patterns the way soldiers know each other's fighting styles. I trust Scar completely. Or I trusted Scar completely, past tense, until 3 months ago when I started noticing things that didn't add up and couldn't be explained by coincidence. Missing catches. Prey that should have triggered my web that didn't. Boundary markers reset. In ways I don't remember resetting. Small things. The kind of small things you dismiss when they come from someone you trust. The kind of small things that look very different, in hindsight. But that is a problem for later. Right now, in this specific moment, I have a different problem that has arrived without warning and is hanging in my outer web. Right now, I have a creature caught in my web that I did not expect and do not immediately know what to do with. It was the outer boundary that triggered first, the long-range sensor threads I have strung. Between the eastern ironwoods, 50 meters above the forest floor, the vibration pattern was completely wrong. Not prey walking into silk, not a predator moving through and triggering the boundary alert. Something falling, uncontrolled, heavy, fast, heavy, uncontrolled. The vibration of something that had lost the ability to direct its own descent and was simply coming down. I was at the eastern boundary in under 2 minutes. 8 legs have advantages that 2 legs will never fully appreciate. What I found caught in the outer web, tangled in 3 of my upper support threads 50 meters above the forest floor, was a harpy. Not what I was expecting, not what I had contingency plans for. Female, based on the proportions. My knowledge of harpy anatomy is more academic than practical, but the proportions were clear. Wingspan of perhaps 4 meters. Feathers the deep amber brown of autumn oak leaves. Talons tangled in the threads. Head hanging at the angle of something that had stopped being able to hold it upright. She was unconscious, or close to it. Her head hung down and her breathing was the shallow, fast pattern of something that had pushed itself past its limits and was now paying the cost. One wing was wrong. Even from my distance, I could see the left wing was hanging at an angle that left wings are not designed to hang at. Something had happened to that joint. Something had happened to the rest of her, too. There were marks across her exposed skin, claw marks, parallel and deep, the kind made by something with serious intent rather than something she had simply flown into. Someone had attacked this harpy, something with claws larger than mine, which is a short list of things in the Ashwood. I observed her for approximately 90 seconds. This is standard procedure. You do not approach an unknown creature in distress without first assessing whether the distress is genuine or a trap. Harpies are intelligent. Harpies are also, in my experience, extremely willing to act distressed if they think it will get them within striking range of something they want to eat. I am not small, horse-sized, 8 legs, fangs that dissolve stone trolls, but I am also not stupid. I have 8 eyes. I used all of them. I assessed the situation fully before moving. The breathing was real. The wing damage was real. The claw marks were real. The unconsciousness appeared genuine. Her grip on the web threads had gone slack in the way that conscious things don't allow. She was not a trap. The breathing was real. The damage was real. The unconsciousness was genuine. She was in serious trouble, and she had no idea I was standing 20 meters below her. Now here's the part where most predators in the Ashwood would make a simple calculation. Unconscious prey, already in my web, no witnesses. I am fully aware that this is the calculation every other predator in the Ashwood would make without hesitation. Unconscious prey, already caught, no witnesses, no complications. I did not make that calculation. Not because I am soft. I want to be extremely clear on this point. I'm not soft. Horse-sized, 8 eyes. 3 square kilometers of apex territory for 2 years. I did not make it because I ran a different calculation. One that most predators in the Ashwood are not equipped to run. I did not make that calculation because of a different calculation. one that most predators in the Ashwood are not equipped to run. The claw marks on this harpy were made by something I recognized: the spacing, the depth, the angle of entry on the deepest mark just below her right shoulder. I have seen exactly those marks before. Once, 2 years ago, on the eastern edge of my territory, on a stone bear that had wandered into a section of forest where it had no business wandering. Those marks were made by a razor-winged drake, a flying predator approximately twice my body mass, territorial instincts aggressive enough to attack anything crossing its claimed airspace, hungry or not. The nearest razor-winged drake nest I know of is 8 kilometers north. That drake's airspace has never included the eastern Ashwood, not once in 2 years. The nearest razor-winged drake nest that I know of is approximately 8 kilometers north. That drake's airspace does not include the eastern Ashwood. It has never included the eastern Ashwood, which meant one of two things. Either the drake had expanded its territory in the past season, which I would have known about. Territory expansions generate conflict. Conflict generates noise. Noise reaches my web. Or someone had driven the drake out of its established nest. Someone with the power and motivation to displace a creature twice my size. Or someone had driven the drake out of its territory. Someone had displaced a creature twice my size from an established nest and sent it hunting in unfamiliar airspace. In the Ashwood, there are perhaps 4 things, with both the power and the motivation to displace a razor-winged drake from an established nest. I know all 4 of them, none of them friendly. None would move a drake without reason. And the most likely reason, given the timing, the harpy in my web, 3 months of unexplained things, was becoming clear, was that someone was clearing the sky, making the upper airspace of the Ashwood dangerous for anything that could fly, making the upper airspace of the eastern Ashwood specifically deliberately dangerous for anything that could fly, making it dangerous for harpies in particular. I looked at the unconscious harpy in my web, at the amber-brown wings and the damaged joint and the claw marks from a drake that should not have been here. Then I looked at the forest around me, at the deep dark between the ironwood trunks, at the shadows that in the Ashwood are always either nothing or something, and you cannot always tell which. Then I made my decision. It was not a difficult decision, once I had run the full calculation. The difficult part was that making it was going to complicate my very satisfying simple life considerably. I climbed to the outer web and I cut her loose from the support threads, catching her weight carefully on 2 of my front legs before she could fall further. She was heavier than she looked. Harpies are always heavier than they look. Hollow bones for flight, yes, but the muscle density required to actually move those wings is extraordinary. I carried her back toward the ancient hollow, slowly, carefully, monitoring the web with the remaining 6 legs as I went. Whatever had sent a razor-winged drake into the eastern Ashwood was still out there. Whatever it was, it had cleared the sky for a reason. Whatever had sent a razor-winged drake hunting in the eastern Ashwood had not, I was fairly certain, finished with what it was doing. The drake was a tool. Tools get used more than once. I needed to get her to cover before whatever had sent the drake found her first. I needed to understand what had driven her through my airspace at that speed. And I needed to figure out whether 3 months of small things that didn't add up had anything to do with a harpy falling into my web. In the Ashwood, things that look unconnected rarely are. In the Ashwood, coincidences are rare. In my experience, things that look like coincidences are usually just patterns you haven't identified yet. This felt like a pattern I was about to identify, whether I wanted to or not. And the pattern, whatever it was, had decided to land in my territory and make itself my problem. If you want to find out what this harpy knows, and trust me, she knows something, drop a comment below. And if you're new here, subscribe. Because this story gets complicated very fast. She woke up fighting. I want to be specific about that because it tells you everything you need to know about what kind of creature she is. Not thrashing, just not panicking. Fighting, with intention, with direction, with the specific focused aggression of something that has been in dangerous situations before and has a practiced response to waking up in one. Both wings snapped open. The damaged left one caught halfway, and she made a sound that was half scream and half something much colder. The sound of someone who is hurt and has decided that being hurt is irrelevant. Her talons drove into the floor of the ancient hollow, and she spun to face the nearest wall and pressed her back against it. Then she saw me. I was sitting approximately 3 meters away, all 8 eyes forward, all 8 legs still. I had been watching her breathe for the past 2 hours, and I had a fairly good read on her condition by this point. She stared at me. I looked back at her. We stayed like that for what I estimated was about 6 seconds, which, in a confrontation between 2 predators, is actually quite a long time. Then she said something in old Harpy dialect that I'm not going to repeat because this is not that kind of story, but the general meaning was clear enough. "I'm not going to eat you," I said. My speech is not elegant. The mouthparts of a Goliath fang are not designed for the full range of common tongue vowels, but I have been practicing for years, and I am comprehensible. The effect on her was immediate and not what I expected. She stopped. Completely. The aggressive posture held, the wings still spread as far as the damaged one would allow, but something shifted behind her eyes. Processing. The rapid recalibration you see in intelligent creatures when reality contradicts a committed assumption. She had assumed I was going to eat her. I had spoken instead. These 2 things did not fit together, and she was visibly, carefully working to reconcile them into something that made sense. "You talk," she said. Her common tongue was better than mine. Accented with the clipped consonants and elongated vowels that mark Northern Harpy dialect, but clear. "Evidently," I said. I did not move. Moving at this stage would reset everything. "You're in my territory, my home specifically. I carried you here from my outer web approximately 2 hours ago. She looked around the ancient hollow, took in the silk-lined walls, the organized stores against the far end, the carefully maintained exits. The expression on her face went through several adjustments. You decorated, she said finally. I looked at the walls. The silk lining serves structural and sensory functions, but over 2 years I had arranged certain elements in ways I found aesthetically satisfying. The arrangement is incidental, I said. She looked at me with an expression suggesting she did not fully believe this. The silk is functional, I said. The arrangement is incidental. She looked at me with an expression that suggested she did not fully believe this. I found that unexpectedly irritating. Your wing is damaged, I said, redirecting. The joint. Something wrenched it. If you keep forcing it open, it will get worse. She looked at the damaged wing, then back at me. Why did you bring me here? She said. Not a question the way most creatures ask questions, a question the way a strategist checks their working. She already had several possible answers. She had several possible answers already mapped out. She was verifying which one matched the evidence she was currently looking at. Because whatever attacked you is still in the area, I said. And because you were unconscious in my web and needed cover. Those are the complete reasons. She held my gaze for a long moment. Most spiders, she said carefully, would have made a different choice. I acknowledged this with a slight movement of my front legs that functions in my species as a shrug. I ran a different calculation. I said, the drake that attacked you was not operating in its home territory. Something displaced it. I want to know what. A pause. You likely know what. Something changed in her posture. Subtle. She was very good at controlled expression. But I have 8 eyes, and I have been reading body language in the Ashwood for 2 years. The shift was there. She knew exactly what had displaced the drake. The knowledge of it was not comfortable, and she was managing how much of that discomfort was visible, which meant she was very used to managing it. My name is Kale, I said. I watched her decide whether to reciprocate. It took about 4 seconds, long enough that I could see the calculation running. Vera, she said. My name is Vera. I noted this. In Harpy culture, giving your name to a predator species is a significant gesture. It is not done casually. She had decided something in those 4 seconds. Can you stand? I said. She pushed off the wall, found her feet, talons, technically, same principle, wobbled once, caught herself, set her jaw, and stood. Her balance was notably good for someone who had fallen out of the sky 2 hours ago and had spent the time since unconscious on the floor of a spider's home. Good, I said. Then we should discuss the drake, and the 3 other things I have been finding wrong with my territory for the past 3 months. I believe they are connected. She looked at me. You've been tracking anomalies, she said. Not a question this time either. For 3 months. I said yes. She said nothing for a moment. Then, how detailed are your records? Comprehensive, I said. Everything that moves through my territory, behavioral patterns, frequency, deviation from baseline. If something changed in the eastern Ashwood in the past season, I have data. She looked at me steadily for a moment. Then she looked at the silk-lined walls again, with new attention, the kind that comes from information recontextualizing something you had already cataloged. The expression that crossed her face was complicated. Surface layer, assessment. A hunter, calculating resource value. Underneath that, something else. She had come here, to the Ashwood, to the eastern section, to the specific area of my territory, for a reason. She had not simply wandered in, and whatever that reason was, my records were relevant to it. The drake, I said. Start there. Who sent it? She looked at the entrance to the ancient hollow, at the pale dawn light beginning to filter through the ironwood canopy outside. Not who, she said. What? I waited, all 8 eyes still. She turned back to me, and the expression on her face had settled into something flat and careful and very controlled. You know the Thornspire, she said. I knew the Thornspire. Everyone who spends time in the Ashwood knows it. A structure 30 kilometers northwest, built into the living rock of the Greyvale Ridge. Old construction. Older than the kingdoms, older than most named settlements in this region. Old in the way that makes historians argue about dates, and none of their arguments feel adequate. The kind of structure that gets called a ruin, even though it is clearly still functional, because calling it a ruin is more comfortable than acknowledging what it actually is. I know it, I said. Vera looked at me with those amber gold eyes. Something has been active in the Thornspire for 4 months, she said. Lights in the upper levels, dark for 2 generations. We noticed the first signs in late autumn, she said. Lights and levels dark for 2 generations. We sent 6 scouts, experienced flyers, standard approach protocol. She stopped. I thought about my records. My anomalies had started approximately 3 months ago. Late autumn matched exactly, which was not a coincidence, and I filed it as confirmed connection. Scouts went to investigate, Vera said. 6 of them, experienced flyers. They approached from altitude, stayed outside the visible range of the upper windows. Standard protocol. She stopped. None of them came back, she said. Flat, controlled. The way you say something you have already said several times to several different audiences while keeping the weight of it out of your voice. 6 scouts. Experienced harpies. Which means not careless, not impulsive, not the kind of creatures who make elementary errors. Whatever was in the Thornspire had taken all 6 without leaving trace. Whatever was in the Thornspire had taken 6. Experienced scouts without leaving enough trace for anyone to determine what had happened. 6 people. Gone. No evidence of the how. The drake, I said. It was not random displacement. Vera shook her head, and her expression confirmed what I had already calculated. The drake nesting in Greyvale Ridge is old Felrath, she said. Known territory, 11-year established nest. 3 weeks ago he abandoned it entirely and relocated east. Something drives an 11-year resident from an established nest. Something that makes the nest suddenly, completely uninhabitable. Something drives an 11-year resident out of an established nest. Something that makes the nest suddenly, completely uninhabitable. The Thornspire is in Greyvale Ridge, I said. The Thornspire is in Greyvale Ridge, she confirmed. Whatever is operating in the Thornspire drove Felrath out. He went east, disoriented, hungry, outside his established territory. She looked at her damaged wing. I flew through his new range without knowing it was his new range, she said. I was moving fast. I did not have time to establish protocol. Meaning, she had been running. Something had been behind her. What were you running from? I said. Not a question. She looked at me, and that complicated expression came back. Several layers, the surface one controlled, the one underneath less so. There are things moving in the forest at night, she said. Below the canopy. Not Drake, ground level. Moving in patterns that suggest coordination. We have been watching them for 6 weeks. She paused. Last night they stopped moving in patterns, she said. Last night they moved directly toward the Harpy settlement at Crestfall Ridge. Directly. No deviation, like something had given them a specific target. Crestfall Ridge, 40 kilometers northwest. A high rock formation where several Harpy family groups maintain permanent roosts. Well defended. Has been for generations. The kind of place that has been defended successfully for so long that everyone inside it has stopped thinking carefully about what successfully defended actually means. How many were moving toward Crestfall Ridge? I said. She met my eyes and held them. The answer she gave was not a number. Enough, she said. Enough that I was sent ahead specifically. My assignment was to reach the eastern Ashwood and find... She stopped, recalibrated, looked at me with that calculating assessment expression, deciding how much to say to a predator species in whose home she was currently standing. I watched the calculation run and did not rush it. You were sent to find something specific, I said, in my territory. She didn't answer immediately. She was making a decision, and I could see it running. Watching an intelligent creature decide how much trust to extend to a large predatory spider whose home they're standing in is genuinely interesting to observe. There are records, she said finally. Old records, pre-kingdom, the kind that don't exist in any library that acknowledges their existence. She looked at the silk-lined walls of the ancient hollow. There's a text that describes the Thornspire, what it was built for, what it contains, what the protocol is for shutting it down if it activates without authorization. She paused. The last known location of that text, she said, was the ancient hollow of the Ashwood's resident Goliath Fang, approximately 200 years ago. I was quiet for a moment. I looked at the far wall, at the deep recessed space I had found sealed when I first occupied this territory and had not yet fully investigated. Sealed spaces in old territories are the kind of thing you approach carefully. I had been approaching it carefully for 2 years, which meant I had not yet approached it at all. I had been meaning to investigate it for 2 years. I had not investigated it because, as I have mentioned, my life was simple and satisfying, and sealed recesses do not announce themselves as urgent. The sealed section, I said. Vera's eyes went to the far wall immediately. She had already identified it. Of course she had. Yes, she said, one word, completely still. I looked at the sealed recess, then at Vera, then at the entrance, where the pale dawn light was now fully established and the Ashwood was beginning its daytime noise cycle. Somewhere in those daytime sounds was something that didn't belong. A subsonic vibration, too low and too regular for natural sounds, running underneath everything else like a second pulse. I had been hearing it for 3 months. I heard it more clearly now than I ever had. And I understood for the first time that the clarity was increasing because the source was getting closer. I heard it now more clearly than I ever had. And I understood for the first time that I had been hearing it because whatever was generating it had been getting closer. I need to check something, I said. I moved to the far wall, to the sealed recess. The silk layering over it was old, extremely old, completely unlike my own work. Someone had sealed this deliberately. Someone who knew how to work with Goliath Fang silk, which is not a common skill. The silk was layered in a pattern I recognized from my own instinctive construction methods. Another Goliath Fang had sealed this, one who had lived here 200 years ago, if Vera's information was correct. Another Goliath Fang had sealed this, one who had lived here 200 years ago, if Vera's information was accurate. I ran a foreleg along the ceiling edge. Vera was watching me from across the hollow, very still, wings folded now, the damaged one held carefully close. She had found a position that minimized strain on the joint. I noted that. She was adapting to her injury efficiently, adjusting her behavior without being asked, without complaint. This was useful information about what kind of person she was going to be to work with. Because I had already decided we were going to work together. She had not finished deciding yet. That was fine. I was patient. Patience, as I have mentioned, is worth more than size. The silk seal had a specific give point, a section where the layering thinned, where the original occupant had built in an opening mechanism. It took me approximately 4 minutes to find it. When I pressed the right configuration of legs against the thin point, the seal released. Not dramatically. Quietly. The silk parted along a prepared seam and the recess opened. The smell that came out was old, dry. The specific combination of old silk and preserved material that means something has been sitting undisturbed for a very long time. Inside the recess, wrapped in a silk package that had preserved them intact for 2 centuries, was a collection of documents, written on material I didn't immediately recognize. Not paper, not parchment, something more durable, something designed to last past the point when whoever wrote on it expected to still be around. I brought them out carefully, Vera crossed the hollow in 3 steps and crouched beside me. For a moment we were both looking at documents older than either of us, written in a script I could partially read. She could read it fully. Her expression changed the moment her eyes found the first page. "This is it," she said quietly. First time since waking that her voice had lost the careful, controlled quality entirely, unguarded. The way a voice sounds when you have been looking for something for a long time and found it in the last place in the last possible moment. "What does it say?" I said. She looked up at me, then back at the documents. Her hands, taloned, careful, strong, moved to open the outer wrapping further. "It says the Thornspire was built as a containment structure," she said. "Not a fortress, not a residence. Containment." She looked at me. "For something they could not destroy and could not release." The subsonic vibration in the forest outside was slightly louder than it had been 10 minutes ago. I was certain of that now. I had a baseline reading from 2 years of passive monitoring. It was louder than it had been 10 minutes ago, and I was certain of this because I had 2 years of baseline data. Louder meant closer. Closer meant less time than I had estimated. "How do we shut it down?" I said. Vera turned pages carefully. "There is a sequence," she said. 3 locations. 3 binding points that have to be reached in sequence. She stopped on a specific page. "The first binding point," she said slowly, "is in the Ashwood, within the territory of the ancient hollow." She looked up at me, the look of someone who has just realized that the pattern they were following led them exactly where it was supposed to lead them. "Below us," I said. She nodded once. "Below us," she said. We both looked at the floor of the ancient hollow at the same moment. I looked at the floor. At the root structure I had always assumed was the natural base of the ironwood. At the faint pattern I had noticed in my first week and catalogued as an interesting natural formation. Not natural, deliberate. The roots had been guided into the pattern over a very long time, shaped so carefully that the work was indistinguishable from nature unless you were looking for it. "We need to go down," I said. Vera stood. She flexed the damaged wing once, testing, assessing. Then she looked at me with those amber gold eyes, and in them I could see the calculation completing. She had arrived running, injured, single objective, found the documents, found me, a Goliath fang with 2 years of territorial records, and a sealed recess no Harpy could open alone. "You have silk that can support my weight," she said, the beginning of a negotiation. "Yes," I said. "You have the ability to read those documents," I said. "And you know the Thornspire's layout." She looked at me steadily for a moment. Then, "Yes." 1 word. The complete answer to both questions, simultaneously. "Then we go down," I said, "and figure out what comes after." Vera held my gaze for a long moment. Then she did something I hadn't seen her do since waking up. She relaxed. Not completely, but enough. The set of her shoulders changed. The careful maintained tension in them dropped by a fraction, the way tension drops when a decision that has been difficult to reach is finally reached. "Your territory records," she said. "The anomalies for the past 3 months. Do they include anything moving in the forest at a consistent depth, approximately 4 meters below surface level?" I looked at her. "Yes," I said. "I logged it as geological, seismic activity." She shook her head slowly. "Not geological," she said. I was quiet. 4 meters below the surface, moving in coordinated patterns. For 3 months. Directly below my web network, which I had built above ground level, and which had therefore never detected it. My web had a blind spot, and I had been living above it for 2 years without knowing it existed, which is the specific kind of gap in a comprehensive system that is most difficult to find. Scar knew about the underground. Centipedes are tunnel creatures, ground-level operators. Scar had been my partner for years, and knew exactly what my web monitored and what it missed. 3 months of small things that hadn't added up, missing catches, reset boundary markers. A subsonic vibration I had catalogued as geological. The 3 months of small things that hadn't added up. The missing catches, the reset boundary markers, the subsonic vibration I had been cataloging as natural. I looked at the entrance to the ancient hollow, at the full morning light outside, at a forest I had believed I knew completely and was rapidly discovering I did not know as well as I had assumed. That is a specific kind of uncomfortable, finding a gap in something you had considered comprehensive. The Ashwood had been teaching me things about itself that I had not thought I still needed to learn. "Scar," I said. The name came out flat and quiet, the way you say something when you have been avoiding saying it for 3 months and have finally run out of reasons to avoid it. Vera looked at me. "Who is Scar?" she said. I looked at the open recess, the documents, the Harpy standing in my home with a damaged wing and amber gold eyes. "A complication," I said quietly, "that I should have addressed 3 months ago when the first small thing didn't add up, and I chose to give it the benefit of the doubt." Vera looked at me steadily. I looked at the floor, at the root pattern that was not natural, at the binding point below us. "Stay close," I said. "If anything comes through that entrance that isn't me, use the rear exit. Left wall, 3rd sill panel from the corner. Push through." She looked at the wall, then at me. "You built a rear exit," she said. Yes, I said. I'm a predator. I think about exits. She almost smiled. Almost. Not quite. But the muscles of her face moved in that direction. I moved to the center of the floor and began clearing the top layer of root debris from the guided pattern. 2 years of living above a binding point for something contained here before the kingdoms existed. In the Ashwood, things that look like natural formations are rarely natural. I had known that. I had assumed it applied to other things. The pattern cleared. Beneath it, old silk, old root, old stone, layered with unmistakable deliberateness. The work of someone who understood both the forest and what was contained below it. Someone like the Goliath Fang who had sealed the documents and left them for the next occupant to find when the time came. The documents had been left deliberately, sealed by someone who knew another Goliath Fang would eventually occupy the ancient hollow, someone planning for a future they would not be present for. That kind of planning is either the work of someone very wise or someone very afraid. In my experience, usually both. Ready? I said. Vera moved to stand close. She had the documents folded into a carry position I couldn't fully see. Somewhere in the structure of her good wing, a secured space. Practical. She had done this before. Ready, she said, voice even. I noted that. We were about to go below the ancient hollow toward a binding point for something contained here for 2 centuries, currently vibrating toward us from the northwest. Her voice was even. I noted that and filed it. Mine was even too. We went down into the floor of the ancient hollow, into the dark below the root pattern, toward the first binding point. Below the ancient hollow, the world felt different. Different in the older sense. The sense that the stone and air had been here before I had a word for either of them. Not dark. I see clearly in complete darkness. But the age of the place was a physical thing. The weight of it was not dark. I want to be clear about that. I can see in complete darkness. 8 eyes, multiple light spectrums, the full sensory range of a Goliath Fang operating in its preferred environment. But below the root pattern, below the guided root structure that 200 years of careful growth had shaped into something deliberate, the world felt different. The air was older. The stone was older. Everything down here had been here longer than the forest above it, and it knew that, and it wanted you to know it too. The passage opened almost immediately after we pushed through the root layer. A carved tunnel roughly 3 meters wide and 2 meters tall, lined with a material I recognized as compressed silk over stone. Old silk, the same vintage as the documents. The same maker, almost certainly, given the construction methodology, the way the threads interlocked, the specific tension pattern of the weave. The Goliath Fang who had occupied the ancient hollow 200 years ago had built this passage, had built it carefully, with the intent that it should last, with the intent that someone would eventually use it. I thought about that as I moved through the passage. Someone had built infrastructure for a future they would not see. That requires a specific kind of faith, or a specific kind of fear. In my experience, the most durable constructions are built by people who felt both faith and fear simultaneously, and built through them rather than waiting for one to resolve. Vera moved quietly. She had adjusted her posture for the lower ceiling. Wings folded tight, head slightly ducked, talons adapted to the stone floor with more grip than I expected from a creature built for altitude. She was adaptable. I was noting this systematically because systematic observation is how I function, but I want to be honest. She was more adaptable than I had expected. And I had expected quite a bit. What else did the documents say about the binding points? I said. She had been reading while we walked, pages held in a careful carry position against her good wing. Vera was, I was noting, the kind of person who does multiple things simultaneously and does all of them to a standard that would be considered high if they were doing only one. 3 binding points, she said. Triangle formation. First below the ancient hollow, here. Second, at the Grey Vale Ridge base, directly below the Thornspire. Third, she said, at a location the text marks only as the deep root, no other name, just the deep root, and a set of coordinates that places it in the oldest ironwood grove in the Ashwood. You know it, she said. I said yes. The deep root, the central point of the oldest ironwood grove, 6 kilometers northeast of my territory. I had visited it twice in 2 years. Both times I had left faster than I arrived, and I had not formally examined why until this moment. The deep root makes every predatory instinct I have tell me to pay attention, not because of any visible threat, but because of the opposite. A complete absence of normal threat signals. Nothing moves there, nothing hunts, nothing competes. In a forest of constant competition, a zone of complete stillness is either sacred or extremely dangerous. In a forest of constant competition, a zone of complete stillness is either sacred or extremely dangerous, possibly both. In the Ashwood, usually both. The first binding point, I said. What does the text say to do when we reach it? Vera turned a page. The rustle of the old material in the tunnel was oddly loud. There's a seal mechanism, she said, built into the floor of the chamber at the end of this passage. The text describes a specific sequence of pressure points, designed for Goliath Fang leg placement. She paused. It could only have been designed for a Goliath Fang, she said. The pressure point spacing matches your species' leg geometry exactly. No other species has the right limb configuration to activate the sequence. The Goliath Fang who built this had built it for their own species to operate, which meant they had known another Goliath Fang would need to be here when the Thornspire eventually needed sealing. They had planned for that, left records where the right person would find them, built mechanisms only the right species could activate, the sealed documents, the passage, the binding sequence designed for 8 legs in a specific geometric configuration. All of it had been left for me. Not for me specifically, for whoever occupied the ancient hollow when the Thornspire activated, for whatever Goliath Fang was here when it became necessary. I happened to be that Goliath Fang. The thought settled in me in a way that was neither comfortable nor uncomfortable, more like a weight being placed in a previously empty space, something that would require adjustment. How long have we been walking? Vera said, not anxious, asking for operational information. Approximately 4 minutes, I said. The passage appears to be leveling. We should reach the chamber soon. As I said it, the passage widened. Then it opened into something considerably larger than a passage, and I stopped moving for 1 full second, which for me is a very long time, to register what I was looking at. The chamber was large, larger than the ancient hollow above, roughly circular, with a ceiling high enough that Vera straightened fully and her wings had room to shift if she needed them to. The walls were the compressed silk and stone construction of the passage, but here the silk had been worked into patterns. Not decorative, functional, in the way that my own web patterns are functional. Signal structures. The silk on the chamber walls was still active after 200 years, still transmitting, still processing, still monitoring whatever it had been built to monitor. I felt it immediately. A faint vibration in the frequencies my biology reads, not the subsonic pulse from outside, something cleaner and more purposeful, like a system running on reserve power, maintaining minimum function until someone arrived to reactivate it fully. The specific feeling of something that has been waiting. In the center of the chamber floor was a raised stone platform. On the platform, a pattern of indentations, circular, varying in size, arranged in a geometric configuration that I recognized immediately. Leg placement points, 8 of them, sized precisely for a Goliath Fang. Spaced precisely for a Goliath Fang's natural standing geometry. I crossed to the platform and stood over it. Then I looked back at Vera. She was at the chamber entrance, the documents open, reading quickly. The sequence, I said, when you're ready. She scanned the relevant section, eyes moving fast. Whatever else Vera was, she was a practiced reader, someone who processed text at speed and retained it. She found the relevant passage in approximately 8 seconds. I counted because I find precise observation useful even when the situation is moving quickly. 8 contact points, she said, simultaneous. Hold for 10 seconds, then the 3rd and 6th release and recontact in reverse order. The text specifies maximum sustainable pressure for the Goliath Fang species, she said. Not light contact. It uses the phrase full engagement twice. The repetition appears intentional. Full engagement. 8 legs pressing at maximum sustainable force simultaneously into 8 precisely placed contact points in a chamber below the oldest occupied territory in the Ashwood. Understood, I said. I positioned myself over the platform and lowered my body. Each leg found its corresponding indentation, fit with a precision that was startling, the kind of fit that says something was built for this specific configuration by someone who understood it completely, from the inside. Then I pressed down, full engagement, all 8 legs, maximum sustainable force, into 8 precisely placed contact points in a chamber built for exactly this. The chamber responded immediately, not dramatically. No explosion of light, no theatrical shake of the stone. The silk on the walls brightened, the signal web activated to full function. And I felt something I have no exact word for, a connection running from the pressure points through the stone below, reaching outward in directions I could feel but not see, reaching to Greyvale Ridge, reaching to the deep root, 2 of the 3 binding points dormant, 1 now awake and waiting, reaching to Greyvale Ridge, reaching to the deep root, the 3 binding points of a triangle, 2 of them dormant, 1 of them now awake and waiting. Is it working? Vera said from the entrance. Yes, I said. I held the position, counted. At 10 seconds, I released the 3rd and 6th contact points and recontacted them in reverse sequence. The chamber brightened further. Then, with a sound like something that had been holding tension for 2 centuries finally releasing it, a section of the chamber floor slid aside. Not fully, partially. A gap, perhaps half a meter across, opening into something below. From it came a pale, steady glow, blue-white, artificial, associated with nothing in my natural environment. Vera crossed to the gap immediately, and I moved beside her. We both looked down through the half-meter opening into the pale blue-white glow below. Below was a space I had no reference for. Not a cave, not a room, something in between. Partially shaped by intelligence, partially grown by the same long patience that had guided the root pattern above. And against the far wall, watching us with 8 amber eyes that registered in my biology as requiring immediate attention, was a creature I had no current name for, roughly my size. 8 limbs, but configured differently. 4 functioning as legs, 4 more as manipulative limbs, the way some creatures in old texts are described, but that I had never seen in my lifetime. Covered in a material that looked like chitin, but moved like silk. Dark, with a surface that caught the pale light and redistributed it in ways that suggested it was doing something more than reflecting. It was looking at us with complete focused attention. The way things look at you when they have been waiting for a very long time and are now deciding whether what arrived is what they were waiting for. Vera made a sound beside me. Short, tight, controlled. Not fear. Vera was not. I was fairly confident. Someone who frightened easily. Something more like recognition. You know what that is, I said. She looked at me, then back at the creature below. The documents, she said slowly. The section I haven't read yet. She opened the old text to a section deeper in. Her eyes moved over the text. Her expression went through several adjustments, the kind of adjustments you make when text is telling you something that recontextualizes everything you have read before it. The Thornspire wasn't built to contain something external, she said. Her voice was very controlled. Measured. The voice of someone communicating accurately while their internal processing is running at high speed. It was built to protect something, she said. Something that the kingdoms at the time wanted destroyed. Something they considered a threat because it was different from them and they did not understand it. She paused. The Goliath Fang built this to hide a survivor, she said. The last of a species the old kingdoms tried to eliminate. Sealed here, not contained, hidden. I looked at it. It looked back at me with the specific patience of something that has had 200 years to practice patience and has become very good at it. Well, what species? I said. Vera looked at the text again. She read in silence for a moment. Then, the text uses a name I don't recognize in any current language, but the description... She stopped. The description matches the Goliath Fang family, she said. An earlier form, pre-divergence according to the text, before the species split into the variants that exist today. She looked at me. I looked at the 8 amber eyes, at the 8 limbs, 4 legs, 4 manipulative, the ancestral configuration that appears in old texts before the Goliath Fang lineage diverged. It is what I was, I said, before we became what we are now. Vera was quiet. She looked at the creature below with an expression that had several layers and kept the deepest ones out of sight. Vera looked at the documents. The divergence happened over several generations under specific pressures, she said. The text also suggests, she said carefully, that the pre-divergence form retained capabilities the current form lost in the process. I looked at the 4 manipulative limbs, at the silk-like chitin surface and the way the pale light moved across it, as if being processed rather than simply reflected. What capabilities? I said. What capabilities? I said. Vera scanned the text. The silk, she said. The pre-divergence form produces a different type of silk, not structural, not sensory. She found the specific passage and read it carefully. Connective, she said. Silk that carries signal between living systems. Between the forest's root network, the stone, the creatures living in it. The text calls it the linking thread. She looked up. The old kingdoms considered it dangerous, she said. A creature that can link any system to any other, communicate through root network, stone, anything organic, is a creature that cannot easily be controlled. I considered this while looking at the pre-divergence form. It had still not moved. Still watching, still listening. I considered this while looking at the pre-divergence form below. It had still not moved. Still watching, still patient. But there was something in its posture that was not simply waiting. It was listening. To the chamber, to the signals in the walls, to whatever the binding point activation had done to the larger network it was connected to. Something is using the Thornspire to reconnect the old network, I said. Not the binding system. Whatever was there before the kingdoms built over it. Vera looked at me. Yes, she said. One word flat and certain and carrying the weight of 6 scouts who had not come back. If the network reconnects fully, the Thornspire gains access to everything the linking thread connects, I said. Every root system, every stone network, every living thing with any organic connection to the Ashwood. Yes, Vera said. Flat and controlled, the voice of someone who had known this for a while and carried it without anyone to share the weight with. Yes, Vera said again. Her voice was flat with the effort of keeping it flat. That is what the text describes. That is what the 6 scouts found evidence of before they were taken. She paused. That is why the pre-divergence form cannot be found by whatever operates the Thornspire, she said. The linking thread in one pre-divergence individual can anchor an entire network against unauthorized access. It can lock the door, she said, permanently, if the sequence is completed correctly at all 3 binding points before the Thornspire finishes its reconnection process. I looked at the creature below. It looked back at me. 8 amber eyes, patient and very old and very aware of everything we had just said. It understood us, had been understanding us since we opened the gap, monitoring the activation sequence, following the conversation through sensory capabilities that 200 years of solitude had not diminished. You have been waiting, I said, for a Goliath Fang to activate the binding point. The creature looked at me with those 8 amber eyes. 200 years of waiting expressed as a very specific quality of attention. It did not speak. It moved instead, a slow, deliberate shift of its 4 manipulative limbs, producing something from a silk pocket in its own body structure. A thread, single, pale, with a sheen, unlike any silk I had catalogued. I felt the frequency from above the gap, different from structural, sensory, anything. It held the thread toward me with the patience of something that has been waiting 200 years and can wait a little longer if necessary. Vera was reading, pages turning fast. She found the relevant section, and I heard her breath change. Not a gasp, just the specific adjustment that means someone has just read something significant. If a current form Goliath Fang accepts the linking thread, she said, it activates the connective property in their own silk. Not fully. The divergence means the current form can't produce linking silk natively. But with the thread as a bridge, my silk becomes connective, I said. She said yes, and I held the word for a moment. Connective, linking, the thing my diverged lineage had lost and the thing being offered back to me. I looked at the thread, at the creature that had waited 200 years below my home for a Goliath Fang to come down and accept what was being offered. I thought about Scar, about 3 months of small things, about a subsonic vibration getting steadily closer from the northwest, about 6 Harpy scouts who had not come back, about a structure dark for 2 generations, now active, sending coordinated forces through the root network toward a settlement defended so long that no one inside questioned what that defense actually meant, About a Goliath Fang who had built all of this so that a future Goliath Fang could stand here and make this choice freely, with full information. I thought about the documents left by a Goliath Fang who had built all of this specifically so that a future Goliath Fang would be able to stand here and make this choice. Not forced, not tricked. Given the information, given the access, given the choice, the distinction mattered to whoever built this. I could see that in every deliberate decision of the construction. I reached down through the gap and took the thread. It was the clearest decision I had made in 3 months of unclear ones. It connected the moment I touched it. Not painful, not dramatic, but immediate. A frequency shift in my silk glands I had never felt before. My territorial web suddenly had depth it had not had. Not just surface signals. Below, through the roots, through the stone. The Ashwood's underground architecture lighting up in my awareness like a map I had always been missing the key to read. Not just surface signals. Below, through the roots, through the stone. The Ashwood's underground architecture lighting up in my awareness like a map I had always been able to see, but had been missing the key to read. And in that map, moving through the eastern root network with a directness and speed that confirmed everything I had suspected for 3 months, I felt Scar. Not his surface vibrations, his actual presence in the root network. 4 meters down, moving fast toward the ancient hollow, toward the open passage. I felt at least 4 other presences moving in formation behind him. Coordinated, purposeful, familiar with the underground architecture in a way that said they had been using it for some time. "We need to move," I said. "Scar is in the root network. He is 90 seconds from this chamber." Vera was already folding the documents back into her wing carry. She looked at the pre-divergence form below. "Can it travel?" she said. I looked at the creature. It was already moving, not the slow, deliberate shift from before. Fast, efficient. It pulled itself up through the gap with 4 limbs in a single, fluid motion that covered 3 meters in less time than it took me to register it. Old, patient, and when the moment required it, very, very fast. 200 years of stillness had not cost it anything that mattered. It stood beside us, and the 3 of us looked at each other for a moment. 3 species in a 200-year-old room built specifically for this meeting. The Goliath Fang, the Harpy, the pre-divergence ancestor. I had no particular sentiment about the moment. I had a scolopendra 90 seconds away and 2 binding points still to reach. Sentiment is for after. "North Passage," I said. The linking thread's map showed me the secondary exit, a root tunnel surfacing approximately 3 kilometers northeast, in the direction of the Deep Root and Grey Veil Ridge, both remaining binding points, both dormant, both needing activation before whatever was in the Thornspire finished its reconnection. In the direction of the Deep Root, in the direction of the second binding point at Grey Veil Ridge, and the third at the Deep Root itself. I moved. Vera moved with me. The pre-divergence form moved alongside us both. Not behind, not leading, but alongside. 3 separate paces adapted to the same tunnel, the same direction, the same problem. Behind us, I felt through the linking thread the moment Scar entered the chamber. Felt a specific vibration signature of 4 meters of armored centipede reading the space we had just vacated. Then I felt something else entering the chamber through a different passage. One the linking thread showed me had been opened from outside the root network, by something with access to the underground architecture. Not Scar, something larger, something that moved through the root network the way a system moves. Deliberately, efficiently, without waste. Something that had known where the binding points were for 3 months. Something that had cleared the sky over the Ashwood specifically to prevent exactly what we were now doing. Something that had been clearing the sky and coordinating underground movements for 3 months. That had known the binding points existed and had spent 3 months positioning to prevent their activation. And that had just entered the chamber behind us. And I felt its presence in the linking thread map clearly, large and deliberate, and already moving toward the North Passage. We ran, all 3 of us, into the North Passage. The Goliath Fang, the Harpy, the pre-divergence ancestor, away from whatever had just entered the chamber behind us. I ran with the linking thread active in my silk glands, and the Ashwood's underground map alive in my awareness. The full map. For the first time in the forest's history visible. Running in a tunnel designed for a Goliath Fang is, I will admit, significantly more comfortable than running in a tunnel designed for anything else. The North Passage was wide enough for my full body width, tall enough for my full leg movement, and ran in a straight line northeast with none of the irregular branching that natural root tunnels produce. Vera ran at my left. She had adapted her stride to the tunnel within the first 10 seconds. Wings folded tight, talons finding purchase on the compressed silk floor with the grip of something accustomed to rock faces. The pre-divergence form moved at my right, 4-legged and faster than its resting posture had suggested. It was keeping pace without apparent effort. I was monitoring the linking thread as we ran. Scar and his 4 companions had entered the chamber. I felt the dense armored weight of 4 meters of centipede reading the space I had just vacated. The larger presence moved differently, through the root network itself, sliding between root structures with the ease of something that had used this architecture for a very long time. It was moving parallel, not behind us, alongside, 8 meters below, at our pace, tracking us through the same underground map I was now reading, which meant it could read the linking thread, or something equivalent to it. Whatever was operating the Thornspire had access to the underground architecture that should have required the linking thread to navigate. I thought about that for exactly the 4 seconds I could spare. 4 seconds while running at full speed through a tunnel with 3 presences behind me and the underweave below. I thought about that for the 4 seconds I could spare while running at full speed through a tunnel with 3 presences behind me and an unknown quantity below. If it could read the underground map, It knew where the North Passage surfaced. It could be waiting at the exit, or at the deep route, or both simultaneously if it had sufficient active agents. It knows where we're going, I said. Vera looked at me without breaking stride. The larger presence can read the underground architecture. It is moving parallel to us. Vera processed this. How many total? I ran the linking thread count. Scar and 4 in the chamber. The large presence below. 3 more from the Thornspire's direction. 9, I said, including the large one. Vera's expression did not change. She processed difficult information by becoming more still, a pattern I had noticed and found useful. Is the large presence the same category as the Thornspire's primary operative? She said. I checked the linking thread. The weight, the density, the signature. Different, I said. Something that was already in the Ashwood before the Thornspire activated, in the underground architecture for significantly longer than 3 months. Vera looked at the pre-divergence form running at my right. Does it know what the large presence is? She said. Not to me, to it directly. She had already figured out it understood us. The pre-divergence form produced a thread from one of its manipulative limbs and touched it briefly to the tunnel wall. The signal web in the tunnel wall responded immediately. A pulse ran through the silk lining, and in the linking thread map I felt a shape emerge from the underground architecture that had not been visible to me before. Old, larger than the root network, older than the Thornspire, the kingdoms, the Ashwood as it currently existed. Something woven into the bedrock before anything that currently lived here had arrived. That is not an enemy, I said. Vera looked at me. No, the pre-divergence form said, the first time it had spoken. Clear and low, undegraded by 2 centuries of silence. That is the reason the Thornspire was built where it was, it said. Before the kingdoms, something existed in the bedrock of Greyvale Ridge, not alive as we are, but aware, the way very old things become aware. Before the kingdoms, something existed in the bedrock of Greyvale Ridge, not alive as we are, but aware, the way very old and deep things become aware. We kept running. The pre-divergence form kept talking, and its voice carried in the tunnel with the quality of something that had been preparing these words for a long time. Before the kingdoms, it said, something existed in the bedrock of Greyvale Ridge, not alive the way we are alive, aware the way very old and very deep things become aware over sufficient time. The kingdoms believed it contained something dangerous, it said. The original builders knew better. They put a door between the surface world and something it was not ready to use responsibly. The original builders put a door between the surface world and something it was not yet ready to use responsibly. That was the actual purpose. The large presence is the underweave, I said. A portion of it, the pre-divergence form confirmed. The part extending into the eastern Ashwood, aware of the activation, moving toward the binding points. The pre-divergence form confirmed this. I was becoming practiced at reading its nonverbal communication. 2 days of observation had given me a reasonable working framework. Then why does the operator want access to it? I said. The tunnel curved north. The 3 incoming signatures had found the North Passage entrance. We were being followed from behind and tracked from below. The pre-divergence form answered without hesitation. Not for communication, it said. For control. For reach through every root system on this continent simultaneously. The underweave connects everything, the pre-divergence form said. Every root system, every stone network, every living thing with organic connection to the ground beneath the Ashwood and beyond. Without the binding points locked, you can direct that connection. You can reach through every root system on this continent simultaneously. I thought about what that meant for a moment. Every root system, every forest, every field, every inhabited settlement with wooden structures, every creature whose biology was connected to the soil. Everything that grows in the ground, I said. Everything that lives in it? The pre-divergence form said yes. The operator wants to use the underweave as a transmission system, not for communication. We had been running for approximately 11 minutes. The tunnel floor was beginning to rise. We were approaching the surface. The underweave was still moving parallel. Not ahead, not cutting us off. Moving with us. And as it moved, I felt through the linking thread something new. The underweave's attention. Not aggressive, not territorial. The attention of something very large that has just noticed something small it has been waiting for. My silk was built from the linking thread now. Every anchor, every signal thread, every sensor in 3 kilometers of Ashwood. Part of a network the underweave was reading. And what the underweave was reading through my silk was the Thornspire's operator. The 9 presences, all of it mapped and understood. It has been waiting for the linking thread to activate, I said. Since the Thornspire started, it could read the operator's movements, but it could not reach the binding points on its own. It needed the binding points activated, the pre-divergence form said. Someone with the linking thread, a Goliath Fang who had maintained a territorial web long enough for it to carry the connection. 2 years of web building, maintained daily, expanded methodically. I had been building exactly that infrastructure without knowing what I was building it for. 2 years, I said. The pre-divergence form said. The previous occupant maintained the ancient hollow for 30 years before the Thornspire required activation in their time. You were faster. The underweave adjusted. The underweave had structured conditions to make this exact sequence possible. The Drake displacement, the coordinated ground movements, the pressure that drove a Harpy into my outer web boundary. All of it arranged. I said it aloud not because I needed to confirm it, I already knew, but because saying it made it a fact that Vera and the pre-divergence form had also heard and filed. The pre-divergence form said nothing. Vera looked at me sideways. The complicated expression, many layers, the deepest ones out of view. You were guided here, I said. Not accusatory, informational. I was given intelligence pointing me here from a source I considered reliable, she said carefully. Then, I am reevaluating the full chain of that intelligence. Which meant yes, guided. And she was deciding how she felt about that fact while continuing to move forward at full pace through an underground tunnel, which I considered impressive. I understood the feeling completely. 2 years of building infrastructure for something I had not consented to. The distinction between being used and being equipped for a purpose you didn't choose is a fine one. I had not resolved it and suspected it would take some time. The underweave and I were apparently going to have a conversation about consent at some point when the immediate situation allowed for conversations. The tunnel floor began to rise. Ahead, pale daylight filtered through a gap in the root structure. The North Passage exit, in a dense ironwood grove approximately 3 kilometers northeast of the ancient hollow. The deep root. We had surfaced at the edge of it. The ironwood grove ancient around us, roots fused into a continuous surface, the ground itself feeling like a single organism. I emerged first. 8 legs found the surface. The linking thread map was clear. The underweave was closer here. The 3 signatures, 90 seconds behind us in the tunnel. The deep root was everything I remembered. Trees so old their roots had fused into a continuous surface, the ground itself feeling like a single organism. Nothing moved. The normal Ashwood competition, hunting, territory, the constant pressure of survival, completely absent. The zone of stillness I had noticed on my 2 previous visits was absolute. Vera emerged behind me, then the pre-divergence form, which moved immediately to the center of the root-fused ground and placed all 4 of its manipulative limbs against the surface. The 3rd binding point, I said. The pre-divergence form confirmed. The activation here requires the linking thread from a current form Goliath Fang and direct contact from a pre-divergence form simultaneously. I moved to the center and pressed 8 legs against the root-fused surface. The contact points were different from the chamber platform, grown into the root structure over time, organic rather than constructed. Full engagement. The deep root responded immediately and enormously, the way a large system responds when the final connection completes. The underweave moved. Through the linking thread I felt it rising, expanding, filling the root network outward, toward the Thornspire, toward the binding points already activated. 2 binding points active, now the 3rd. The network locked. I felt it in every thread of my territorial web simultaneously, every anchor and sensor suddenly carrying a frequency it had never carried before. The Thornspire's operator felt it. The 3 presences behind us stopped dead still, not slowed, stopped. Through the linking thread I felt the underweave's full attention directed at the root network they were using. Locked, not a temporary hold, but a seal, which I felt through the linking thread as a qualitatively different thing. The root network was not paused, it was closed. They cannot move through the roots, I said. Correct, the pre-divergence form said. The binding points create a closed network. Anything using the root architecture without authorization is now stationary. The pre-divergence form said. Temporarily, it added. How long? I said. Long enough for the Thornspire's primary activation to be interrupted, it said. Without the root network, the operator cannot complete the connection. The attempt fails. It will try again, it said. But not today, and not without rebuilding its underground access, which will take significant time. Not permanent, but an interruption significant enough that Crestfall Ridge's defenders would have time to prepare, that the Harpy communities could act, that the operator would have to reveal its methods in rebuilding. The pre-divergence form confirmed the 2nd binding point would not be required for the immediate interruption, but it would be required if the operator returned with greater force. Then Scar came out of the tunnel. I had felt him coming through the linking thread, the moment the temporary lock released enough, his signature moving fast toward the surface. He emerged at the tunnel exit and stopped. 4 meters of red-black armored centipede, every plate I had cataloged over years of partnership. Every movement pattern I had memorized through seasons of shared territory. He merged and stopped. 4 meters of red-black armor, every plate I had cataloged over years of partnership. He looked at me. I looked at him. Kale, he said. His voice was the same. That was the specific, difficult thing. Entirely the same as always, and the things it had said while I was not listening were entirely different. Scar, I said. His 4 companions emerged, 3 ground predators and 1 stone basilisk, rarely found in the eastern Ashwood. You activated the binding points, he said, not angry. He sounded relieved, which was not what I had been expecting, and which I filed without commentary because the situation did not allow for commentary yet. You activated the binding points, Scar said. He was not angry, he sounded, and I had to file this carefully because it did not match my model of the situation. He sounded relieved. You actually did it. You were working against me. I said, 3 months. The missing catches, the boundary resets, the underground movement beneath my web. He looked at the pre-divergence form, at Vera, at the deep root, still faintly luminous. I was given a choice 3 months ago, he said. Cooperate and maintain access to my territory or refuse. What did they promise you? Vera said. Scar was quiet for a moment in the way that something is quiet when it is deciding how honest to be. Scar was quiet. Safety? He said. For everything in the eastern Ashwood. When the operator connects to the underweave, everything in the network is preserved. Everything outside it is expendable. I believed that for 3 months, he said. I believed cooperating was rational, that I was protecting you, even while working against you. The pre-divergence form watched him with its 8 amber eyes. It said nothing. It did not need to. The watching was sufficient. I looked at Scar, at the 4 assets in my territory, at the stone basilisk that could not have arrived without his guidance, because Scar had run the calculation the same way I ran calculations, with the best available information. The operator had given him information that made cooperation look rational. The operator told you that, I said, that everything inside the network would be preserved. Scar said yes, and you believed it because... I stopped. I knew why he had believed it. The operator lied to you, I said. He looked at me. I have known that for approximately 12 days, he said quietly. When the first movement went toward Crestfall Ridge, he said. The operator told me it was defensive, repositioning. He paused. 12 days I knew and said nothing. I had already moved the basilisk, he said. Already opened 3 sections of underground access. Already committed to a chain of decisions that could not be reversed simply by deciding to reverse them. Already, he stopped. The specific silence of someone who has done something irreversible and is standing in front of the person they did it to. I had 8 eyes and 8 legs and venom that dissolved stone trolls and a linking thread active in my silk glands. I looked at Scar for a long moment. Greyvale Ridge Base, I said. You mapped the underground route 3 months ago for the operator. He said yes. Then you know how to get us there before the operator rebuilds enough access to try again. You want me to help you finish what you started? He said. Not quite a question. The voice of someone who needs to hear it said aloud before they can process it as a real thing. I want you to fix what you broke, I said. You know the operator's asset positions. I know the network map through the linking thread. Between those 2, there's a route. Scar looked at the pre-divergence form, at Vera, at the deep root still faintly luminous around us, at the basilisk, and 3 ground predators standing very still in a zone of silence they found deeply uncomfortable. The operator will know when I change direction, he said. I said I knew. That is why we need to move before the temporary lock releases fully, approximately 23 minutes. Scar looked at me. Not angry, not defensive. Running the calculation the only way it can be run, which is honestly, I knew that focused from the outside. This time I also knew what it felt like from the inside. The specific way to figuring out what the right thing is and then deciding if you are willing to do it. The one where you figure out what the right thing is and then figure out if you are willing to do it. And then you do it anyway. The basilisk cannot follow, he said. Route is too narrow. I said I knew. The others can pace on the surface. Then let's go, Vera said. She was already moving. She had understood it needed to work through between us without her input. That kind of reading of a situation is genuinely rare. I noted it and filed it with the other things I was noting about Vera. We moved into the root network. The underweave moved with us, present in the linking thread as a resource, not directing. A door held open, something vast, watching a sequence it had been waiting for finally unfold. Scar moved ahead, knowledge of the Northwest network exact. Every junction, every asset position, every safe passage. He moved through the underground the way he always had, with the confidence of long use. The pre-divergence form moved between us. Vera ran at my left, ducking under root junctions with the efficiency of someone who had adapted to underground movement in 2 days and was now genuinely good at it. 40 minutes of running. 2 near interceptions Scar navigated before they resolved. 1 section dense enough with operator assets that we climbed 15 meters above the floor to avoid them. And then, the Greyvale Ridge Base, a chamber carved into living rock by the original architects, the people who had understood what they were building and placed one of the locks here specifically. A chamber carved into the living rock by the original Thornspire architects, the people who had understood what they were building and had placed one of the locks here specifically. Stone floor, no silk. Contact points worn smooth by many sets of legs over many centuries. The binding point had been activated before, multiple times, by multiple Goliath fangs. I pressed 8 legs against the stone contact points. Full pressure, full weight. The second binding point activated. And through the linking thread I felt the triangle complete. All 3 points active. The network closed, the underweave's connection locked and sealed. The Northwest signatures stopped. All of them. The 3 pursuing us, the additional assets, the coordinated movement that had been building toward Crestfall Ridge for weeks. Everything in the root network stopped. The underweave's response was total. Through every thread of silk, every anchor, the contact points under my legs. The full weight of something that had been here before the kingdoms, directing its complete attention to a network that had been accessed without authorization for 3 months by something that had mistaken patience for absence and indifference for permission. The Thornspire's operator had spent 3 months mapping the underground, repositioning assets, clearing the sky, eliminating surveillance. It had assumed the binding points were dormant. It had not accounted for a Goliath Fang who built a territorial web for 2 years, a pre-divergence ancestor who waited for 200, a Harpy who read ancient documents at full sprint, or a Scolopendra who had taken 12 days too long to change sides and then changed anyway, which turned out to make all the difference. Scar sat against the chamber wall, the posture I recognized from years of shared territory. Tired, not injured, working tired, the kind that comes from doing something difficult. Done, I said. He said yes. Done, I said. He said yes. Vera was reading the final pages of the documents. She had not stopped reading at any point in the last 40 minutes. The pre-divergence form was still. The network lock stops the underground access, I said. It does not stop the operator. Scar confirmed. Surface assets, the Thornspire itself, significant capability remaining. They will not abandon a 7th century plan because of one setback, he said. But the setback is significant, and the next attempt will be different because of what we have done here. I said yes, a different problem. Not easier, different in kind, which is what matters. Different means the previous strategy no longer applies and new information is required. 7 centuries, Vera said without looking up. The original activation attempt was 700 years ago, before the kingdoms, before current settlement patterns, before everything that exists here now. The builder of the Thornspire is still active, she said. 700 years of attempts, each building on the previous, each one getting closer. She looked up. This one was the closest yet. 700 years, planning by something that did not run out of patience the way things with normal lifespans ran out of it. We interrupted it, I said. Not ended it. Vera said yes. The pre-divergence form said the binding points were active, the underweave was locked. The next attempt would face those locks already in place. That is a different problem than the one we started with this morning, the pre-divergence form said. And then, quietly, with the quality of something that has been waiting to say this for 200 years. Thank you, the pre-divergence form said. And I understood the weight of those words from something that had waited 200 years to say them, this morning. I had woken up with a harpy in a silk hammock and a vibration I had catalogued as geological for 3 months. That was this morning. That had been the complete description of my situation. I looked at the linking thread in my silk glands, at the underweave in the background of my awareness. Quiet now, the quality of something that has done what it needed to do and is simply present. Vera folded the documents back into her wing carry. Crestfall Ridge needs to know everything, she said. The binding points, the underweave, the operator, and what stopped it. They will want to know about the pre-divergence form, I said. She said yes. And about you, she said. You are the most important creature in the eastern Ashwood right now. The number of people who will want to meet you, not all of them friendly, is going to be significant, she said. I looked at my territorial web, still active, 3 kilometers of silk sensor network, something I had no precise word for now. Not just mine, part of something larger, still mine, carrying more than my signals. I maintain a territory, I catch prey, I avoid what I cannot kill and eliminate what I can, I said. That was a complete description of my life 6 hours ago. Vera looked at me steadily. And now, she said. I was quiet, looking at the stone contact points worn smooth by centuries of Goliath Fang legs, by the long sequence of predecessors who had stood here when necessary. Now I have a linking thread, I said. A connection to something here 700 years. A scolopendra who owes me a reparative debt. A pre-divergence ancestor who waited 2 centuries for the right web to be built. Useful, I said. Something brief and unguarded moved across Vera's expression and was gone. Useful, she repeated, with a tone I did not have a complete reference for. I filed it. I would develop the reference in time. There was, apparently, time to develop things now that the network was locked and the immediate crisis was a contained one. The pre-divergence form watched us both. Its posture had something in it I could only describe as satisfied, appropriate, for something that had waited 200 years for this morning to finally arrive. Scar pushed himself upright. We should move. Surface. I know the route. He looked at me. I know what the reparative debt means, he said. Eastern boundary markers, the missing catches, all of it. He moved toward the chamber exit. The 3 ground predators fell in behind him. The basilisk was still at the deep root, a problem I would address later. The linking thread was quiet in my silk glands. The underweave was present in the background of everything, the way very old things are present when they have finally done what they were waiting to do. The eastern Ashwood above us, my territory, 3 kilometers of silk sensor network in ancient hollow, a sealed passage now open, a binding point now active. The same territory I had maintained for 2 years, simple, satisfying, sufficient. That had been the complete description of it 6 hours ago, different now in every way that mattered, and the same in all the ways that had made it worth maintaining in the first place. I had not asked for any of this. I had been running a territorial web in a dark forest, catching prey, keeping to 3 kilometers, finding it completely sufficient. But I had built the web. 2 years of full commitment and careful maintenance and the specific patience I had always considered my most significant advantage. And the web, and the patience, and the territory had been exactly what was needed. Not because I had planned it, because I had simply been what I was, as completely as I could manage. That, in the end, is the only plan that reliably works. Be what you are as completely as possible and trust the rest to follow. We went up, into the Ashwood, into the dark between the ironwoods and the ancient root systems and the underweave present in the background of everything. Back to the territory. Mine, and now also something more than mine. And I intended to maintain it with the same commitment and patience as before. Only now I knew what I was maintaining it for.